Whoa. Hey. Oh.
Hey, what? Yes.
No fade. No fade. No fade. There we go. That's a much nicer fade. That's very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
We're
Chief.
live. We're live. Thanks, Chief. Yeah, the Chief's screwing us up here. I just went ahead and posted comments with our comment with our coffee roasters, Hemisphere Coffee Roasters, our sponsor of the show. Hey guys, thank you for joining us. Welcome. We are live right now. It is the StewKast episode 8, and we are going to review the first 2 episodes of the Mr. McMahon Netflix series. This is a wrestling podcast. Who else to talk about in pro wrestling but Vince McMahon Jr. So, of course. So I'm here. I am Lou Marconi at omarconi251 on Instagram, at omarconi1973 on Twitter X. My co-host, friend, Corey Castle, at Corey Castle everywhere. How you doing, Corey?
I'm great, man. I'm great.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. We truly appreciate it. Thank you for joining me there, Corey. Yeah, it is the StewKast, and we are part of the Combat Zone Network, which is a subsidiary of the Fans First Sports Network. We appreciate each and every one of you. Click on the sponsor, Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. Get some great coffee from them. Actually, they're a local company out of Columbus, Ohio. Good coffee. So I went ahead and made sure.
When you do your checkout and asks you how you heard about the coffee, say it was Lou. Say it was. Hey, Lou sent me. Lou sent me.
Hey, how you doing? Hey. So we're here to talk about the Mr. McMahon series, and I'll let you start. What are your initial thoughts on the first 2 episodes?
It is historic. Like that's all I can say is like this is something that like this is huge.
Yeah.
It just feels huge. It feels like it's gonna change the way people view the business. I think wrestling's gonna get a different audience at this point, and like seeing how it transitions into like wrestling and WWE is going from this point to then being itself on Netflix. It's gonna open up like a huge, wider thing, and especially like all the different kinds of people that they interviewed for this documentary. It just reads epic to me.
Yeah, I like how it started and it had everybody that got together. When it was Vince himself, it was Linda, it was they brought Stephanie and Shane. I do have a Shane McMahon story I'm going to do before the end of the show. It's kind of funny. This goes back when I was there in the Attitude Era. Shane was a good dude. Shane was a really good dude. And then they had obviously Hogan and Mark and John Cena, and all the guys popped up, all the stars, including Cody Rhodes. When it started out with his early childhood, and the stuff that I already knew, that he grew up. Yeah, I knew where it was because I lived in that part of North Carolina where he grew up, in a trailer park in North Carolina.
Yeah, dude, I didn't know any of that stuff. That was all brand new stuff to me.
He graduated from East Carolina University, ECU, which is in Greenville, North Carolina, which is an hour east of Raleigh, and about 40 minutes, not 40, maybe 20 minutes south of that, 25 minutes south of that is Havelock, North Carolina, was where he grew up, in a trailer park. And he had, I guess he had an abusive stepfather. He never knew his birth father until he was 12 years old. And that's just interesting. He never met him until he was 12 years old, and he got to know his dad. And eventually he worked for the family business. And I like kind of like how his dad was, he back then, father-son relationships were different. I would like to say. And
there was like a suck it up buttercup sort of
tough
vibe
love. Tough love would be the way to put it. And I think going through that abuse as a kid might have made him the man that he was, to be the promoter and the businessman that he was.
Right.
Also, his dad gave him a chance. He gave him a small town to run in the territory. So like Bangor, Maine or something like that. And he made it successful. And he's like, okay, maybe we got something here. That was an interesting story because I know he started announcing, and I guess the television show announcer threatened to quit unless he got paid more. And you ever heard that story with Vince McMahon Sr. with the quarters?
A lot of those stories were first time hearing that stuff.
Oh,
Like
you never heard?
I didn't know that he didn't know his dad until he was older. Like I didn't know that
Yeah,
he had an abusive relationship with his stepfather. I didn't know that he like basically was nothing before like
he
he was
came
like
from.
just some broke dude. I did not know that.
Yeah,
And that this is all, if it's news to me, it's definitely going to be news to other people. And
yeah.
it's funny because like I grew up watching over and over and over Wrestling with Shadows, that documentary, that that
Hmm.
like molded me as a kid. Like I loved that. So this will be that for like wrestlers now coming in, or kids who want to be wrestlers. This will be
Yeah,
just that for this generation, which is
yeah.
really really rad. I love it.
Well, keep in mind, especially back then, to get into the business was not easy.
Mhm.
He was somebody's son. And it was
Right.
just like, and Vince McMahon Sr. with the quarters, that's what he does when he thinks. And a lot of times, if you have a shitty match and he's looking at you while he's playing with those quarters, you're going to get fired. That's what the rumor was. And even Hogan told the stories about the quarters with Vince McMahon Sr.
Mhm.
What he said was he goes, go announce. He let his kid go announce. So, and Vince really kind of didn't do well at first because it was new. I mean, he was learning something new and he struggled, but he knew how to tell a story. He knew how to paint a picture. He knew how to translate what was going on in the ring to the audience. And he hit. I mean, there's a lot of great memories for me Saturday night's main event when it was him and Jesse Ventura.
Mhm.
So there was definitely something to be said about that. He was a good announcer. Vince, I mean, they said he was a shitty commentator. I said he wasn't that bad. He didn't really wasn't good at naming the moves and stuff, but he was good at, he made the product better. He had a good broadcasting voice too. So
Well, I mean, I think whatever like Bruce Pritchard was referring to when he said that uh, was probably talking about when he was brand new, like,
yeah,
and they maybe cut it to make it look like he was trying to say that, like, the whole broad net of his entire broadcasting career, which it wasn't. He wasn't that.
no, I think whenever you're brand new at anything,
Right.
yes, of course, when you first try, like when you first started working in the business and getting into the ring, you're not
Mhm.
going to be that good. Nobody's a natural right away. Even
Mhm.
though the closest to that might have been Dwayne Johnson, but he grew up around the business. He had a great understanding, a great mental capacity for it just before
Right.
he even started. And he was always around the ring. So yeah,
Yeah, it's the most natural at things you can be. It's still like your instincts are gonna have to take a minute to kick in. You're not just automatically gonna kick in. You're gonna
and
be able to master it.
it comes to you as you get more experience is what
Mhm.
happens. And that's what really happened with Vince. He came to him as he got more experience doing it, got more experience working with his dad. They could have told more stories because I remember Vince even saying this in other interviews where he would be in the car. He'd be in the back seat of the car, and his dad and people that worked with for his father would talk in the car, and he goes, "You don't even dare ask a question. You just listen." And that's the way it was back then.
Mhm.
And that's how it was. And eventually, I remember him talking about how they, he basically mortgaged his future to buy the company, and he mortgaged his future on the first WrestleMania. There was a couple things in that first episode I wasn't sure, but I wouldn't think he would lie about this. His father, just the day before he died, told his son that he loved him.
Mhm.
It meant the world to him to hear that. I'm sure it did because he wanted
Mhm.
his father's love. He wanted his father's affection. That's all they wanted. And he gave it
Mhm.
to him at the end. I think maybe his father knew he was no longer going to be there and he was going to do that for
Mhm.
him.
Right.
Um, I think too was his father telling him, with the other promoters saying "f them,"
Mhm.
they're not my
Right.
friends. You're beating
Right.
them for you. I do know this. I don't know if you heard this story. Eddie Graham ran Florida the Graham, and Mike Graham was a
Right,
son.
right. Mm-hmm.
Vince Jr. respected that relationship and friendship that Eddie Graham and his dad had. So he did not go to Florida until after Eddie Graham passed away. I heard that. And Mike Graham even said that they purposely did not run in Florida because of that, because he respected that relationship so much, that Vince Jr. did. So
What's interesting about it so far is it's not like the hit piece people were expecting. It's not like
yeah, no,
it's not a burial of the guy. It's much like getting a broader understanding, like, and go, well, wow, this guy never had a second to process anything. Like
no, and he was a workaholic. I knew that about him. He always worked. He was always working on the next thing. And he was constantly trying to get better, trying to make money, trying to prove, which proves, look what he built. Look what that became.
right.
So,
Without him, neither one of us would be who we are.
no,
For sure.
no, without WWF. I mean, people were saying, well, if the territories were still around, but territories didn't make that much money. They weren't, it wasn't big business.
Right.
It wasn't the amount of money. That's why a lot of guys, when you had that chance to go to New York, make your run in New York, you kind of put your money away when you were there. That's usually the deal. I don't know. I don't know. Go ahead.
As a talent, as an in-ring talent, I do often think about how it's it would be cool if the business were set up where there was more options to like make a living doing it, as far as like traveling the towns and stuff. I guess that like that kind of used to be a thing, but I don't know if that was making a living. That was probably just kind of just getting by on a handshake and a hot dog, you know.
A lot of business was done by handshakes and your word. The first guy to,
and then injuries and all that stuff like was completely handled differently back then.
mm-hmm.
So like to go like it's the same thing of like, oh, make it great again, when it's like, oh, was it really as great as you think it was? Because
Right.
your perception of it was something because you were a fan.
Yep.
Like that's yeah. I mean, dude, I thought indie guys from around here when I was a little kid were rich just because they were wrestlers. I just because I was a kid and I just was like, this is larger than life. This guy must be rich from wrestling. But then I
Right.
see him delivering pizzas, and I'm like, oh, how come that independent wrestler guy's delivering pizzas? Like he's a big famous wrestler. Like he shouldn't be out here. And then
What
like
was
the
the one? Balls
reality.
Mahoney didn't want to have a job at a gas station.
Right.
He was Balls Mahoney. Yeah.
Right.
Even though he was broke, and hey, they're hiring at that gas station. I can't do that. Yeah.
Right.
It's been humbling, going from doing that to doing that. How can I put this? The WrestleMania thing was interesting, and how they got MTV, Cyndi Lauper,
Yeah.
and he was always thinking bigger picture and doing what he did. And it
A
was the
lot of
first.
the
Yeah.
excuse me.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying a lot of the stories and stuff is all stuff we may have heard before, but
Mhm.
this is for like a newer audience, and it's never been covered to this degree before. Probably like
Yeah.
it's outside of the WWE produced documentaries, so this is a whole other way of looking at it, and I like that a lot. So it doesn't have any kind of bias.
No, it's the first two. No, not at all. I thought it was interesting. Did you the Union story?
Oh yeah, when Jesse Ventura was trying to, I didn't realize that was around WrestleMania 2. I didn't understand,
Yeah.
like I didn't remember the timeline of it, but I remember hearing of it. But I didn't remember.
Yeah.
I didn't remember hearing when it was.
Jesse waited to have the media be released for WrestleMania 2 to go to them and say, look, we got them now. So we can all stick together. We can get something done. And Hogan put the kibosh on it because he knew he was going to give up money. He knew if he gave up his top spot and his money, so he stooged it out.
Mhm.
At the same time, I like what Meltzer said about it, and I'm actually complimenting Dave Meltzer here, but he was right when he said, it wouldn't have worked. They wouldn't have stuck together. Wrestlers won't stick together because a couple guys would be willing to work for less. There'll be guys willing to come in there and work for less if you hold out for money. So it just doesn't work. That's why it'll never be unionized. And it's true because they won't stick together. So really it's not even really needed now because they have so much more benefits today with the guaranteed money, the guaranteed revenue. It's all this other stuff. It's a totally different business now
Mhm.
compared to 1985. So anyway, but that was interesting. Hogan freely admits to it. He says, "Yeah, of course I did." He politicked a lot to keep his spot,
Yeah.
which he was the golden goose. He was the goose laying the golden eggs. He was. So he was.
His head was the egg.
But yeah, in the second part of the episode, they were talking more about the scandals,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. The
it was
Wendy
in,
Richter screw job finished with
yeah,
the spike.
yeah, and the reason why Hogan jumped ship to WCW was because Vince McMahon's steroid trial, and he didn't know Vince was going on.
Right.
And it's kind of like the way that second episode ended was Hogan. That's going to lead into Hogan's testimony. I remember when that happened. That was a big story. That was '94
Mhm.
because I remember this right after Hogan signed with WCW, and that was a big story too.
Mhm.
And yeah, he actually did right. Hogan said, he told the truth. He goes, I'm going to tell the truth. And he didn't tell the truth on Arsenio Hall, which Vince told him, just come clean, which
Mhm.
probably would have been a better PR move if he would have just came clean and said, yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hogan was probably also trying to public perception of him. He was probably trying to babyface his perception, and people. It's ridiculous, especially back then. I mean, I don't. I mean, it happens now today, but like sometimes people go like, "Oh, you only just took the steroids and then your muscles got big." Like people don't realize that steroids are just a part of the very big, large amount of work that you've still got to continuously do.
Yep.
And
You don't just take them and then you get
right,
big. You
right,
gotta eat right. You gotta train. You have to
yeah,
train like an animal. Now it does. They do help you recover from workouts.
right.
They do help you grow. How can I put it? But also, it does weaken other things about you too, like your tendons and your joints. And you could have joint problems. There's lots of side effects that come with them.
A lot of people's hair
Yeah.
suffers.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Hogan was already balding, but yeah, it didn't help him. I'm
Yeah,
sure it didn't help. But of course, Hogan was gassed up. Jesus, look at him. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, trying to tell me he wasn't, or our Ultimate Warrior. I mean, God. I mean, just those guys alone. It's almost like when you were there, you had to get anywhere. And I told the story like when I was told in '90, no, it was 2000. I was told to get bigger
mhm.
when I was there, and I chose not to, and I didn't go back because I think who I said that was Kevin Kelly. I said it to. I said I'd rather drive a truck for a living than do that. That's what I said to
Well,
him.
look, I mean, your life it might shorten your life, and it might. I mean,
There, yeah. If
yeah,
you don't, if
right,
you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where you're getting them from,
right.
there's a
Well,
lot of things, especially if it's underground. Oh God,
unregulated underground, that sort of stuff. I think
yeah.
it could be like im- like sometimes your mobility suffers a lot. Like you,
Oh
and
yeah. There's
then
lots of things. Yeah, they could. There's a lot, and it affects people differently too. Some guys that I knew that took them didn't roid rage. Some guys did. I mean,
Mhm.
there's some. I'm not going to name names, but there's some. It's like really that set you off. It's just kind of like other guys you wouldn't even know they were on. I mean,
Right,
unless you looked at them. So that all depends on how on the personality. I think with that.
right,
One
yeah.
other thing. Go ahead, but want to touch on one other
Oh, I
thing
was
about the
just gonna
second
say
episode.
through my experience so far, from what I've seen, um, you're only going to kind of be like it only brings out your inner jerk if you already are bringing out your inner jerk without them. You know what I mean? As far as like roid rage and stuff, it's not, not necessarily. It just it's kind of like pro wrestling in itself. It's like you're supposed to be your version of yourself turned up to 10. That's kind of what what steroids I've seen so far do to some people.
Yeah. Well, it enhances your personality, and if you're an asshole, you're just gonna be a bigger asshole.
Mm-hmm.
The sex scandal stuff. I want to touch on that before we
But the
wrap this
boys
up.
thing, I don't know. I didn't know much about
Yeah,
that at all.
I think from what they said, and I knew Patterson was accused, but it was never
Mm-hmm.
proven. That's why he kind of just left and then
Right.
came back. Once it died down, he came back. And I've been there with Pat Patterson. I've actually had a few conversations with him because he just wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing, being at the right place when I was supposed to. He was doing his job. Pat
Right.
Patterson was very good at his job. Very good. If he wasn't very good at his job, he wouldn't have stayed there as long as he did.
Well,
And
he
worked
was
for
a he was a finishes guy, right? Like he would
Yeah.
just produce the
Yeah, I think
finishes.
he just saw me in the area and he's like, "Hey, are you supposed to be here? What are you supposed to be doing?" He was just making sure I was where I was supposed to be. Yeah, I'm supposed to be here. I got to be a gorilla in 10 minutes. Okay. That's all it was. It was just something like
Right.
that.
Right.
Just a couple conversations like that. But I've been there so many times after a while, they know who I am, you
Right.
know. Um, but yeah, but that too. But the other guys were gone because they were guilty, and it was just sick. It was absolutely disgusting. And I think the one lawsuit, Vince did pay her off. He
Mhm.
settled with her, but he said it was consensual. And sometimes you got to be careful when you have money. And I was kind of thinking that when I was talking about before, like I had nobody ever accused me. That's probably because I wasn't rich.
Mhm.
I didn't have a lot of money. That could have been it. That could have been the reason. They had no
But
motivation.
like, what would anyone have to gain by throwing false accusations at you?
Yeah, nothing. Go
No.
ahead. You want to sue me for what? Go ahead. Um, oh my God. But the Shane McMahon story before we go, I was
Mhm.
at a TV taping. I'm walking. I'm walking by. Shane McMahon is sitting on a folding chair and he just starts talking. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Yeah. And I stopped and I said, I'm doing good. What's up? I just turned around and looked at him. Turns out this was a brand new technology called Bluetooth that I wasn't aware of yet. And he had an
Mhm.
earpiece in his phone and he's talking. And I thought he was talking to me. And I'm like, you what? I'm like, what? And he just kind of waved at me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he kind of waved at me and pointed to his ear. And I said, oh, you couldn't even see it. It was just that. It was just, I thought he was talking to me. And he came up to me later and said, sorry about that. And I was like, oh, no, it's cool. I just said, I didn't know if you needed me for something. He just thought it was like, he goes, no, man, you're good. He was a good dude, man. It was just funny. So that was my Shane McMahon story. But
What do you think of the rumors that like Shane McMahon is going to be part of the storyline in AEW with John Moxley?
I, I don't, I
I
don't
mean, it's just internet.
internet
Internet.
bullshit. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. And one last thing too. We got 1 minute left in the show. Congratulations to Mr. Uso, Intercontinental Champion. Very well deserved, my friend. Very good.
Yeet.
Yeet. Yeet. Good
Yeet
for him.
indeed.
Yeet indeed. Yes, very good, my friend. It was great. So, okay, people, it is the StewKast Wrestling Podcast on the Combat Zone Network, a subsidiary of the Fans First Sports Network. I am Lou Marconi, my co-host Corey Castle. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to do the Mr. McMahon series, episodes 3 and 4, and if there's any wrestling news to talk about. So we appreciate each and every one of you. Corey, anything you want to say before we take it home?
Thanks for everybody who's joined us. Thanks for everybody who supported our sponsors.
Yep, support our sponsor.
Everybody who comes
Coffee.
through and interacts with us, comments on the live stream. If you're feeling like you're not getting enough of Corey Castle and Lou Marconi, you can check out the Sunday Stew Pod available on Rumble. If you follow us
Yep.
on Instagram, you'll check out our daily reels
Mhm.
from
Check
our
out
show. as well as follow us on the TikToks and the
Or X. Yep.
X, Twitch, wherever you stream stuff or whatever. Type in Corey Castle and then you'll get me. And I appreciate that if that's the effort that you decide to take. If you exist, prove to us you exist. Leave us a like and a follow and a subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Leave us a review and get that coffee.
Get that coffee. Thank you very much. Hey, check out Evolving with Corey Castle. Check out the Fanatical Elves with me, Burning River Browns Talk on Friday nights, Stirring the Pot on Monday nights. Sherry has Breezy Browns Talk on Wednesday nights. Guys, we will see you next Wednesday, episodes 3 and 4. See you next week.
Ciao,